All right, good afternoon everyone. We're just about ready to start in a minute or so. We've already got the AT team at the front desk. Councillors slowly finding their way to their seats. I think our online participants seem to be on the screen. We won't test that one. Okay, right, let's kick off. So item 10 then is the draft Katoa Ka Ora Auckland Speed Management Plan. The purpose of the report to outline the proposed approach for a draft speed management plan for Auckland and to seek approval for submission of an Auckland Council controlled road into the draft plan. Over to you, Michael, Andrew, to Stacey, Wayne, whoever's introducing. Thanks.
I'm going to kick this off, Mr. Chairman. So thank you very much for the opportunity to hear your views on the proposed approach for a draft speed management plan for Auckland, and also for our council partners to seek your approval on the submission of an Auckland Council controlled road as well into the draft plan. As Chair of the Regional Transport Committee, I note I have legal obligations under the Land Transport Rule setting a speed limits 2022 to develop, consult and finalise a speed management plan for the Auckland region within legal timeframes. And also as Chair of Auckland Transport, I note that the rule places legal obligations on us to set safe speed limits near schools by all schools by 2027. And also as a neighbouring roading control authority to Auckland Council, we both have legal responsibilities to input into one draft plan for Auckland, and I welcome Michael Roth, Lead Transport Advisor for Auckland Council, who will speak to your own proposed submission. I'd also acknowledge Stacey van der Putten, EGM Safety and Andrew Allen, Executive General Manager, Service Delivery for Auckland Transport, who are here with me and thankfully to answer any question members might have on the robust engagement and research process that actually has been undertaken to date on this management plan. We are legally required to make this plan. We have responded to your call for AT to change its approach to how we prepare such plans, to deliver on value for money and further involve local boards. The primary benefit of the plan is to achieve the safety outcomes that we are directed to deliver on, and I'll just refresh those for you. In 2019, we need to move forward a couple of slides. No, go back. In 2019, the Planning Committee resolved that Auckland Transport work with partners to make the Auckland a Vision Zero region and accelerate the Safe Speeds program. We are delivering on this direction, and today Katoa Ka Ora is overseen by 8 organisations who form the Tamaki Makaurau Transport Safety Governance Group, working together to deliver on a shared vision expressed in the name Katoa Ka Ora, which means everyone alive and well. We acknowledge that speed limits are only one part of achieving the vision of a healthy and safe transport system for Auckland. We are committed to continuing to work with our partners to deliver not just safe infrastructure, but better public transport, effective deterrence and enforcement, the right policy and regulation settings, along with great health and emergency responses. Together, this all creates a safe system. But one action we can take now, which is low cost and high benefit, is to set safe and appropriate speed limits. So, in response to your direction to focus on value for money, travel time impacts, and deeply understand what matters most to Aucklanders, we have based our approach on developing the draft plan on economic analysis and on customer research. We've tested 4 scenarios that would meet the legislative targets to complete safe speed limits setting near all schools by 2017. 2027. The results show that the expected travel time delay is between 12 and 14 seconds for an average urban vehicle trip of about 20 minutes. Our customer research shows that 2 in 3 Aucklanders will accept 3 to 5 minutes for more travel time if it helps make travel safer. Considering value for money, if we only use variable speed limits at a cost of $20,000 per sign, this produces a loss of 80 cents for every dollar invested, or a BCR of 0.2, and is the most expensive option to implement. This is because the sign is off for the times of day when 85% of harm actually happens near schools. What does produce value for money is using permanent speed changes on local roads within walking distance of schools, and using variable signs to maintain travel times on the arterial network and for high-speed rural roads. For these reasons, we believe the best approach for now lies within the 2 scenarios that are depicted in the middle 2 columns on the slide before you. In response to your direction to involve local boards more closely, we have recently completed a second round of workshops with all 21 local boards as part of a robust and comprehensive engagement journey for this draft plan, for the purpose to deeply understand what matters most to local boards, mana whenua, partners, stakeholders and customers. Local boards have supported the principles and outcomes of this draft plan, and many have provided specific requests for speed limit review. We are currently awaiting formal feedback from local boards, and this will be used to guide the locations included in the draft plan. Mana whenua and Matawaka views have been central to guiding this plan since beginning. One mana whenua request involves Kariotahi Beach, which has parts controlled by both Auckland Council and Auckland Transport. So I'd like now just to invite Michael Roth, who represents Auckland Council on the Tamaki Makaurau Transport Safety Governance Group, to speak to this Auckland Council controlled road. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Wayne. Council controls a number of roads, mainly on our beaches and parks. We are proposing to include one of these roads, Kariotahi Beach, within AT's public consultation process for speed management. This road was requested for inclusion by mana whenua, and it is supported by the Franklin Local Board. The proposal is to reduce the speed limit from 100 kilometres per hour down to 20 kilometres per hour. That 20 will be consistent with the adjoining section of Auckland Transport Road, and the Waikato Beach area to the south is at 40 kilometres an hour. The 20 is needed because this is an area where families access the beach, so there are people on that beach area, and there is a history of harm based on speeding traffic. Council seeks to have AT include this to improve safety, to reduce any negative wildlife impacts, and enable police to better enforce inappropriate behaviour by car drivers.
Thank you, Michael. So what might all use these roads? If you live in an area where your local board has supported this plan, you can expect to see safe school zones or permanent 30 kilometre per hour areas on quiet residential streets near schools, town centres, playgrounds and community locations. If you travel on high-speed rural roads or urban arterials and your local board has supported this plan, you can expect to see variable 30 kilometre signs near schools. On urban collector roads that have higher movement function, AT may use 40k limits to provide better travel times, or for rural roads, you may well see 60 or 80k speed limits. So to conclude, we are making this plan because we are legally required to do so, and it delivers on the safety outcomes Auckland have asked for and which you have directed. We have changed our approach to this draft plan in response to your letter of expectations. Work on value for money, travel time impacts, local board involvement and customer research have been fundamental to how we propose to get the most out of existing network and deliver a safe transport network at the same time. So I'll hand over back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. So that's the presentation, folks. Do we have some questions? Councillor Walker and Councillor Fletcher to start us off.
Sure. So in respect of where these limits come into play around a school, is there a distance from the school that covers off the restriction?
Through the chair, yes, there is, councillor. Between 400 metres and 1,000 metres is what we're looking at, dependent on the schools and the roads surrounding it. So 400 to a kilometre.
And is that distance 400 each way, or a kilometre each way, or is that kilometre, for example, split and it's actually 500? So
I might just phrase that as it's the diameter that I'm referring to. So the school at the centre, 400 metres, 200 either side. And when I talk a kilometre, obviously 500 either side.
Okay.
Typically, when we're looking at the bigger circumference or bigger diameter, that 1 kilometre diameter, that's where the school typically butts up to a residential neighbourhood, where there have been requests for lower speed environments in that residential neighbourhood. So we'd look at a slightly bigger area to incorporate parts of that residential neighbourhood where there have been requests for that.
And what is the distance on a given road that speed limit would apply?
The same as the diameter I've just referred to. In essence, what we're looking at is the part in here that deals with schools deals with that 400 metre radius,
Okay.
or the kilometre, somewhere around there.
So, look, I understand that. So, if I ask a question by way of an example, so on Whangaproa Peninsula, there's a school, it's a college, it's a large college, and the school is in the immediate proximity of Whangaproa Road. There's a town centre in the vicinity. At this point, it is, in large part, the only road that feeds to a significant conglomeration of people. So if you were to put this in place, there will be substantial unintended consequences in terms of traffic delays stacking up in this vicinity, especially at peak hour. So I'm just raising a concern. A question that follows from this, is it possible to customise? So in a circumstance where there would be some significant disruption and there's already a crossing that enables people to cross, have you got the flexibility to make those sort of calls?
Yes, of course we do. But maybe what I'll just touch on in terms of might help the sort of conceptual thinking about how the team have gone about this. So over the last few years, there's been 1,700 requests from the communities in terms of for us to review particular road speeds. So the team have taken them out to the local boards and on maps so they can see where those requests have come from alongside all existing speed changes that have happened over the last few years. So there's obviously that proper view in terms of what that looks like. That depends in terms of the environment, which is really important because you're talking about an arterial. So those solutions are going to be quite different from, an urban street that's on a local road. And so yes, there is flexibility in approach, and it's being done in terms of with the local boards. So we are, and Wayne has touched on, we're waiting on full feedback post some of those map exercise with the local boards in terms of the written feedback. So we know absolute in terms of what is supported and what maybe isn't in terms of that. But the local board views have been mapped out for each and every single local board. So that's very, very clear.
Okay. So just a follow-on question through you, Mr. Chair. Clearly engagement with local boards, engagement with the community, which are the people that are affected. Is there a process of engagement on the part of the local board with the community around this, or is there direct engagement on the part of AT with the community? How does that play out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so from here, the timeline is obviously the plan goes for approval to the Regional Transport Committee. So that is currently staged for the end of May. Thereafter, it goes out for public consultation. So there's still a number of things that have to be done until we get to a final plan. So obviously the local community feedback will come into that too. Thereafter, we'll bring that final plan back or suggested final plan for further review before we actually put it in place. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councillor Fletcher, and then Williamson.
Thank you, and I thank the officers for their work on this. My specific question relates to Tahi Beach. For some years, I have been wanting to see speed reductions on that beach. It's a beach that I frequent a lot, take my family to, and I've seen so many near misses between children, horses, cars. I mean, it's just horrible. And so I thank Mana Whenua for raising this matter. I tried when we were dealing with the regional parks proposals last year to bring Tahi in there, but that wasn't appropriate. So that you have it here now is really welcome to me, and I recognise that there's a couple of hurdles to go. But why 20k? Can you give me the answer on that? And also, because I suspect it's something that is going to come up through the next stages, is how do you envisage that it will be enforced?
Council defers to Auckland Transport in the first instance for advice on the speed limits because Auckland Transport has the experts. The 20 kilometres an hour has been chosen because that adjoins the same speed limit for the Auckland Transport section of the beach, which is further north. The Waikato section of the beach increases to 40 kilometres per hour, but that's about 1.2 kilometres south of the access point to the beach. So by that stage, there are not as many people present on the beach. The most important area for us to really get the speeds down low is right where the access is and where the families are likely to be on the beach, and that's where the harm will be.
On the enforcement?
On the enforcement, in terms of the engagement on this one and how it arose was a joint effort in terms of mitigation measures needed within that area. So police have been involved with that. So when we engage further, that will be obviously a key consideration in terms of how we get them to support the enforcement ongoing. So there was a number of things, I guess, that were raised in that particular spot, of 300 vehicles observed after the lockdown period, which obviously became, real horrendous for many things. So there was a request to create a safety zone on the beach with signage, cell coverage obviously looked at in terms of that, speed limits, and obviously how we can get the public to respect the beach a bit more as well as the safety risk around drowning, because that obviously escalated substantially as well. So there was multiple things that were discussed with the community at that time. Yeah.
No, I thank you. And after 10 years, whether you're looking at the safety issues, whether you're looking at the delicate ecosystem, This is really, really welcome for me, and I thank the Franklin Local Board for the work they've also undertaken on it. But I suggest that it's probably important to work with everyone out there, including the Surf Club, to make sure that people are respecting those limits. Thanks.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, thanks. I had a chat to some AT people during the lunch break, and I'm not going to raise some of the specifics I had said earlier on. We'll take that offline because they're to do with things in our ward. Just wanted to go through a few of the higher level things. In section 11, or paragraph 11 of the paper, something stuck out to me that just didn't make sense. It says, at current rates of road harm over the next 5 years, 1 in 2 Aucklanders is expected to be connected to someone seriously injured or killed. And I just don't know how you get that number, because if you take 1.5 million Aucklanders, you divide that by 5 years, you divide that by 2 because it's 1 in every 2, you get to sort of very large number still. And yet I look at the total numbers of deaths and injuries or serious injuries, and it was 648 in your report from April through to March. How can 15,000 people be affected within 648 serious injuries? Can you, well, I want to ask more specifically, can you provide us with the background paper that produces that number?
Yes. Sure,
Okay,
that's it,
that would be
absolutely.
excellent, because that just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
That's the first thing. The second thing is that I would like to suggest that this paper does not proceed at today's meeting, because I don't know how anyone could agree to this when there's still so much unknown about what those distances are. What happens if there's a road that's not in front of the school but comes in a U-bend or something that comes close to that circle of influence? And is that in or is that out? Or does the circle mean it's in no matter what? And I just think that we don't have to have this done until 2027, according to the paper, or the final finished. And I'd suggest that, Mr. Chairman, we at least get a lot better data behind this before we proceed. Because there's a number of things in here that, for me, are big picture or big headline stuff, but are very, very short on detail. And I guess my question would then be, if this seems to have been influenced by the government's initial decision to go and put dramatic big reductions in their speed limit regime, so that all of the government roads were going to have big reductions down to 80k, and others were going to be reduced elsewhere. Now, the Prime Minister announced only a while ago, and sometime in March, that was all over, and that was only going to be the 1% of very serious crash areas. Did Auckland Transport then back away from its program as well, or have you stayed with the program that you had when central government had their big program?
Thanks for your questions. There's a lot to unpack there. Firstly, central government stipulated 1% for state highways, yeah? Not in terms, it doesn't take away our obligation to have an actual speed management plan consulted on by October. And you would have seen, in terms of recent media, other areas across New Zealand doing the same. So that has not taken away. We still have an obligation that we have to have that done by October. So in terms of that, it still has to go through public consultation. Nothing's been finalised, but we need to get there first before we can obviously come back, and so you can see that in absolute detail about what those maps look like.
But I don't know how we can approve this to proceed. Agreement A is to approve the proposed approach and so on, that this proceed. But it's still, I can't tell what it is in terms of the substance, the specifics, what would happen in the case where there was a school, a bit of a gap in another school. Would the speed limit go up and then come down? Would it, that sort of stuff would make it whether it's worth proceeding or not.
I understand your view. In terms of that, we're not actually asking for approval to go out to consultation. It has to go to the Regional Transport Committee to do that. We're asking for approval to the inclusion of Kairatari Beach to go out for consultation with the plan. But in terms of that, when it comes back from consultation with the detail, we'll be able to share that with you. We do have the maps available if any body specifically wants to see an area in which is what it looks like as it's going out for consultation, we can do that.
All right.
Okay. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. So there was quite a bit of social media conversation in which Auckland Transport came in and actually initiated some of it. And it included maps like all through West Auckland. There's a Freiburg Community School here and a bunch of dotted lines around the parameters. It is extensive areas, taking in 20 or more roads around that school. And then the comment here is that these are going to be permanent 30k areas. There's a dozen or so maps here. I actually had them, but I can't find them now, so I had to go to social media. Birdwood School, Lincoln Heights School. That's a smaller area, but it still takes 8 roads. 2 of those roads don't even come off a road that is connected to the road that goes past the school. Am I on the right track here? Is this the stuff we're talking about here? These are the areas what we're going to be deciding on?
Probably what you're looking at is the proposed maps that were taken to the local board that then they provided feedback on.
And so, just for my timing, their feedback's in already, is it?
Some of it's in. We're waiting written feedback in terms of finalising from those maps from the local boards.
And then it goes to a public consultation after that.
Absolutely.
So those 1,700 requests you've had for speed changes, they're from right over the 4,000 square kilometres of Auckland, correct? Okay. And none of those have been, no one, in a street where they've got one person who said, I want a speed reduction, the rest of the street doesn't know about that and your consideration towards it, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. But the way the team presented that to the local boards, it was really clear about the volume of people that had, asked about a particular road. So whether it was 1, whether it was 2 to 5, etc. So, I mean, that's been well communicated in terms of the detail around it.
Okay, thank you. And just looking at all this up here, we are going to have some schools, just for my clarification, which are going to have variable signs and some schools which are not, like these ones on this map, correct? Right, okay. And of all the roads, how many are going to stay at 100k? What percentage of our roads are going to stay, of the roads that you control that's inside this discussion, what percentage is going to stay at 100?
I can't give you that off the top of my head, I'm afraid. Yeah.
There will be some?
Yeah.
Okay. It'd be nice if it's not, thanks. Thank you.
Member Renata.
Tēnā rā koutou. Just in relation to the overall space of the plan that's been proposed here, can you just give me an overview of what engagement you had with mana whenua around this delivery? You made reference with Ngāti Te Aute Waiwohua for the beachfront. What took place? Because you identified 21 boards, especially with engagement of kura kaupapa, marae, papakainga kaumātua housing deliveries.
Thank you for your question. Look, I apologise, I did have that up in front of me and I have now misplaced it. But we've had a number of hui in terms of with Marawaka and mana whenua members in terms of going through the detail. They have particularly requested a number of other areas for consideration, particularly around kura and marae. And so that's sort of been ongoing. Our last engagement was March and April. So, I mean, overall, the positive engagement and feedback provided particular support around safer speeds, around schools, kura, and some variable speed limits rather than permanent. In terms of that, they also provided feedback regarding potential confusion to the public by multiple speed limits and signs. So asked for consideration with that, which was actually something that we heard when we had the workshop recently, and it's being taken into consideration with our planning. Specific locations were raised for inclusion, or at least consideration, or continued engagement. They include Okahu Bay, Papakura Marae, amongst others.
Thank you for that. Just to add then the discussion of the beach front that we have there and Ngāti Te Ata Wauhua has supported that whole space. What were the key themes around that again? Because I did hear some mention, I think yourself referred to that.
Yeah, so that engagement has sort of been ongoing. So that was initially obviously discussed after the lockdown of 2021, when obviously there was a huge amount of people entering in that beach, and 300 cars were observed during that time. So that was then workshopped with the Franklin local board as well. But it's part of a broader safety measures within that area, as discussed in terms of there had been a number of drownings at that time as well, and we had requested support from police for enforcement in terms of that area at those peak times.
Thank you, Member Renata. Councillor Henderson, Simpson and Ferry next. Councillor Simpson.
Right, can you just confirm I've got this right? So first of all, thank you for your work. No, point one, the government has requested we do this, correct? Yeah. So apart from Kariotahi Beach, which I can absolutely endorse, we are then tasked with consulting on a speed reduction program across all schools in Auckland. Second point, right. The fact on whether that is all day, all night, or set times is determined by, this is the bit I'm not sure about, whether it's an arterial road or not, or local board input. How do we know which ones are all day or night regardless, and which ones potentially are variable? Is that determined? There was a slide there that said arterial, you know, the second, it's actually in our agenda, but there's a slide. Not that one. Keep going. That one. The school gate variables. The school gate variables is determined on, complete that sentence, please.
Multiple factors in terms of obviously the speed environment that it's in, and the nature of the road. So they're the first two things, but then of course the feedback from the local boards and their views in terms of permanent versus variable.
Right, okay. Because that I think is a key for all of us who want to see what the local boards say. So you're going to determine the consultation, so should this go ahead, you'll determine the consultation document. Do we see a copy of that before it goes, or do you just, that's as a right, you can do that?
We can absolutely share that.
Right, that's excellent. And then once the consultation has occurred, you bring it back to us as per resolution number D, I think it is. And if there's any feedback we have around that, after you've listened to the feedback and done what you think is going to happen, we can input again at that stage?
Yeah, we've made sure there's multiple gates within that, so we've got the timeline worked out to have that level of engagement.
Okay, so I'm going to put my comment so you don't have to come back to me. So basically, this is something that's being dictated to us. From what I can see, it's as transparent as we can, noting the process. We will have more than one bite at the cherry, for want of a better word, or we will have more than one go to input, noting the only real input we're doing now is Kariotahi, right? Yeah, everything else is, okay. I see where you're going. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. So my question is around, you mentioned before about the 400 to 1,000 metre type catchments around schools. And I'm curious to understand better, when we are looking at those kinds of catchments, is that because we're anticipating that the children are walking from that far away, or because, you know, some kids will be walking from further away, especially if you're talking about, you know, if it's a 400 metre catchment and you're only going 200 metres either side of the school, say, that's not actually that far. So, for example, I walked over 1 kilometre to primary school a very, very long time ago. And that was reasonably unusually far at the time, but, you know, was doable. So what I want to understand is when we're talking about those catchments for the lower speeds, and we're talking about making those environments safer for children to be able to get to school in them, are we anticipating that how they get to the catchment, so to the 30k zone by the school, Are they being dropped off by car within that zone? Are they coming from, and you mentioned the street network, but in some cases there will be walkways which connect up, so that might be the answer to your question, Member Turner, about the, one that looks like it's not connected to the street that goes to the school. There may well be a walkway in those instances, bus stops, their homes. Like, what's the thinking in that space? Because that's something I'd really like to understand. If we're sort of drawing an arbitrary line and saying, well, say 200 metres either side of the school gate, you're on your own, then we're not going to get the uplift that we need, and we're not going to be keeping people safe through the whole journey in ways that encourage the mode shift we need. Thanks.
Good question, and yes, I mean, that has been in terms of those surveys we've done with the school to understand in terms of the footprint that the children are walking up. So there hasn't been a one-size-fits-all approach, I guess is what I'm saying. So within those areas where there is strong support in terms of having proper school zones, so that those connecting streets that feed into the school are part of that, that is included in the plan. Yeah.
Councillor Dalton?
Comment, sorry, not a question, thanks.
Councillor Darby, Baker.
Thanks, Chair. So just on the title, katoa ka ora, is that all will survive? What's the...
It means alive, safe and well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that in mind, I know that's the focus, of course, but slide 3, if you look at the left-hand side of slide 3, it's for every dollar invested, we get $9 of return, 14 seconds of time lost over 5, but that less 500, is that deaths and serious injury savings in a year? Is that what you're referring to there?
Yes.
It's 40, 41, 42, something like that, every month. And every week it's another 10 of deaths and serious injuries. That's what we're talking about here. So it leads me to my question really is, when I look at that and I think, I'm watching the clock on how much time we're discussing this actually, and I'm looking at that early 24 date, it started in early, 22. Is there scope to actually truncate this work, considering every month that goes by, there's another 41, 42 deaths and serious injuries? And I'd say that seriously.
Through the chair, just maybe correct one of the statements that Stacey's just made. Those figures that you see up there, the 500, the 400, the 180 and the 25 are based over a DSR saving for a 10-year period, not a 1-year period. It is highlighted at the bottom of the slide. So that's the saving over a 10-year period.
On the footage.
Sorry, not a 1-year period. Doesn't change, I guess, the point you're trying to make, Councillor, about the importance of this program.
That's the thing I'm stressing. And okay, it's less, but there's still deaths and serious injuries we can avoid by maybe truncating this process. So is there room to truncate this process? Can you do that this faster while consulting with Aucklanders?
We need that plan approved first before we can do that. And you know, there's definitely a process we have to go through. We do have a requirement that we have to set safe and survivable speeds by 2027 around schools. That's a must in terms of that. Anything above that, of course, obviously is pending funding scenarios that we have to work within. So can we do it quicker? I think it's got to be that sort of phased approach as fast as we can go, given some of our constraints. Yeah.
Councillor Baker?
So yeah, look, just in terms of trying to speed this up too, Chair, I'm happy to move this when we have to. Not been a huge fan of in the past of some of the approach that we've had in terms of our speed limits. I'm really quite encouraged by the plan, so well done. My question is in terms of what will be done differently than in terms of how we apply the approach than what we have done previously, which has been one where you know, we've consulted, but we really haven't listened.
Councillor Lee?
Actually, I was signalling to the IT lady about my laptop, but I'll take the call anyway. but she's gone. But I'm.
That's a new one.
I see that the government has given us 4 years or 48 months to sort this problem out, and I heard the question from Councillor Williamson and Councillor Turner, and I just wondered if we could have an extra month to look at this report, which indicates that over the next 5 years, 1 in 2 Aucklanders is expected to be personally connected to someone seriously injured or killed. It sounds like a war zone out there, and maybe it is. And on a similar basis, there's the evaluation of phase 1 of the Auckland Safe Speeds program showed 2 years later, deaths had decreased by 30% on roads where speed limits were changed and increased by 9% on roads where speed limits were not changed. So that's pretty compelling stuff. But I have been around local government, regional government a wee while, and sometimes it's how these things are interpreted and the snapshot of data that's being assessed are quite critical and can actually give different results depending on the way it's looked at. So that's my question. I tell you for why. I went to a public consultation, an AT public consultation last evening at the request of the local community, and it was about closing off a major road, which many in the community were concerned about. And as I walked in, one of the people associated with AT said to me, muttered, "I hope this is not going to be a bloodbath." And I said, well, it won't be if the public are reassured that what they have to say will be listened to. Because all too often in the past, AT has not listened, and because of that, AT has a reputation problem, which AT itself fully acknowledges and is fully trying to deal with. But whether it succeeds is another matter, because business goes on regardless, it seems, even if the government modifies the rules. So what I suggest is that we at least have 1 more month to look at the background data to this report in a little bit more depth, as some members have requested. Thank you.
So I guess the question is, Stacey, does the timeline enable the ability for a month's deferral if the committee was of the view of that?
No, unfortunately it does not. It is a constrained timeline. In order for us to consult meaningfully and look at that feedback and actually get it back here, we need to make sure we have the adequate timeline to do that. And so I do stress that we still have that consultation process to go through to actually get the community feedback so we can provide you with the full and whole picture of what's going to happen.
Is that a refusal?
Yeah.
No more, you're not going to give us an extra month, is that what you're saying?
So saying the timeline doesn't allow for that, as it's been spelled out, and everyone's shaking their heads here, is it?
Mr Chair, the timeline is imposed on the Regional Transport Committee, so we're going to have to proceed. What this consultation about, this meeting is about, is adding your road, which is a beach, and explaining to you the process that we've been through, the very different approach that we are taking to give you comfort that we're trying to do things the right way. And we can't really take things much further after talking to local boards and things like that until we've actually engaged with the communities this proposal affects. So I don't see any gain in delaying it for a month. I just don't see.
Councillor Bartley?
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on one of the risks in the report about public understanding, and I wanted to know what is being done to, really mitigate that risk and really help socialise almost or communicate to communities when this consultation is happening that it is a 12 to 14 second delay, but that has, some real major benefits in trying to address the injuries, the injuries as a result of speed. So that's really where I'm trying to go to, because a lot of things get lost because people don't understand or get the why. So I'm hoping it can come through first in the consultation, because that will flavour the response that you get from the public. And then if it is implemented, then really getting that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Just a couple of questions from myself that maybe go to some of these issues people have been bringing up, and it goes to the role of the local board in the process thus far. So we're going out, it involves all schools, right? So in the area I live in, it's not just schools where people have expressed an interest, so it's going out, covers the whole schools. As far the local boards, they're all different. Are they coming back on a school by school basis for their entire local board area, or are some of them just coming back with an approval in principle to the general notion of the large safe school or the small scale school? So are they getting down to school specific feedback for every school in the local board area, or are there schools that are just they're getting missed out?
Thank you. Some aren't in terms of that. Some it's more zone based rather than if it's school based, I guess, in terms of that. But all are providing feedback based on the mapping exercise.
No, this it applies to all schools. Yeah. Yes, all schools. It's schools per se. Just in respect of the concerns, and I'm, without getting into site specific, I'm thinking of instances, okay, I know this school, I know that school, I know the next school. If this occurs at this school, that's going to be a kind of perverse outcome. It's going down a hill, they'll be jamming on their brakes to 30 k's, and the kids are, away further along, and there's roads, local roads that have 4 schools. Does that mean there's going to be 30 k's 24 hours a day for that big stretch from Veron's Corner nearly down to Beach Haven Road? So what would you say to the councillors who have got concerns that who fully support the notion of reducing speeds around schools, that there are potentially perverse outcomes here if this approach is taken at this location? There are a lot of schools across Auckland. How would you reassure us, given we're going out to consultation, we understand you're coming back, but you're going out with these maps for this area, how might we input in some way or check that local boards captured the relevant information, given that all of them obviously aren't coming back with site-specific feedback?
We can absolutely share in terms of that feedback that we've got by local board if particular councillors would like to receive it. Yeah, absolutely happy to do that, as well as show the maps in which the work has been done.
Do a quick supplementary on that. I've just gone back and looked through all of the Howick local board's minutes and agendas since the last election in October, and not one item on there is to do with speed. I've done a search with the word speed or road control or whatever. There is heaps and others on their agenda. Unfortunately, they have their local board on the same day as we have this meeting on a Thursday, but it's not on there. So did you consult on this some time ago?
No, I know that there was a meeting with Howick local board this year. I can provide you in terms of with the feedback on that.
It's not in their minutes. Okay.
Yeah, I know it was a separate meeting.
It was a separate meeting?
Yeah, I understand it was. Yeah, I'll follow that up.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Workshops are still reported in the minutes, though.
Yes, they are.
Let's take that one off.
Just the headings are.
Let's take that one offline, the specifics of the Howick board. So just to follow up, Stacey, so thank you for that offer. I most certainly, and imagine a number of other councillors will take up that offer. if we have feedback on the mapping, is that able to be considered in this process as councillors before it goes out to consultation?
Yes. Yeah, I believe we've answered that one.
Before, okay,
Yep.
good. Nothing like repeating it for some of the slower people around here like me. Okay, so that's sort of answered my questions, and I get some reassurance from that.
But
And-
my questions weren't answered, sorry, Chair, because you jumped in after my questions.
Yeah, okay, sorry, Councillor Barney, do you want to quickly?
Do you want me to repeat it, or you got it?
Yeah, in terms of our pre-consultation communications program, yeah, absolutely. We'll be doing a lot of pre-consultation work in terms of communicating with their community so they understand what to expect in terms of that, more about that education piece in terms of what these things mean so that it's plain, clear English, and we're communicating in terms of both the impacts within their communities and what that time delay means. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Good luck.
Okay, and so we've just got Councillor Hills now.
I'd like to speak, Chair, if that's okay, after the speakers. But just first a comment for Councillor Williamson. Their meeting on this is actually today. If you Google Howick Speed Management, all the presentations come up. It's actually in their agenda today.
So they haven't met yet, there's a meeting today.
No, that will be the second one in terms of the closeout. Yeah.
The other question I have, and I guess it's maybe a question for you, Chair, if it's not for the staff. So first for the staff, my understanding is you're not asking for us to approve. You're asking us, we have to make a decision on B, but largely this is about providing feedback and noting you'll be making the decision. Do we need to change anything on A, Chair? Or is this just us verbally providing feedback? We don't need to choose any of those boxes. You know, we don't have to point you in the direction of one of the four.
I think it's okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't need to, I guess what I'm saying is that they're not asking for we would like you to prioritise the first box of those four boxes or anything like that. Sorry, on the presentation there were four boxes of.
Oh, yes, yep.
Yeah, so we don't have to make a
No,
decision on that. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
So, sorry, point of order, in that case, perhaps the resolution needs to say provided verbal feedback at the meeting, because otherwise provide feedback says we're going to provide it in the future. That's what we normally would have done at a local board. We would have said, yeah, we'll provide feedback by way of this mechanism. The feedback has been provided through this discussion. So we need to put it in the past tense.
Oh, yes, so we've provided feedback today, in the past tense.
Yeah.
And we also have the ability to provide further feedback after if we request these maps. That's my understanding.
Yeah, in the next part of the process.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we need to put one extra thing that says we request that the information that has been asked for today is give it back to us within the next week or something?
I think so. That Stacey's giving us the thumbs up. So we will get it. No, I'll take the assurance. We'll get it within the week. Councillor Williamson can hold me to that one. So, Councillor Walker, did you want to ask a final question, or has it been all answered?
Has there been any account taken of school travel plans in this process? There has. Just a yes will do. That's fine.
Yes, but what would be nice to be able to report back on that too is actually how many more children are able to walk or cycle to school safely.
Okay, and the other question, as much and all as it mentions that there aren't any financial impacts now and later it'll be within existing budgets, have you done some forecasting on the costs of this? Of the implementation of it? And that, all I'm after is just a yes or a no. Well, that was another question, but I'll leave that to later. Reserve my right to speak.
Okay, so thank you. So I understand, Councillor Baker, you're keen to move it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dalton, and speaking to it, you have the option, Councillor Baker, you don't have to take it up. Otherwise, we go to Councillor Dalton and Councillor Hills to speak to the matter. And Darby. No? Okay, Councillor Dalton, it's yours.
Thank you. Does Auckland Transport want to move back?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, if you want, you can move back a bit where it's safer
Well, you
safer
can
zone.
stay there.
It's a 30k zone back over there. You're going into the 80k zone now. The debate starts. So if you could just go back, this is our process now, so that we don't appear to be talking to people. We're talking amongst ourselves or debating amongst ourselves. Okay, Councillor Dalton, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'd like to thank Stacey for her energy and commitment to reducing our DSI and the intelligence that she brings to this work. And it is so refreshing to have a strong AT woman at the presenters table who believes in the importance of the work that she's doing. I really respect that, because we can be a tough audience, right? So well done, excellent work, thank you. Look, around the reducing speeds around schools, in my area I've been really fortunate. We've had significant investment in the speed reduction around schools, and the evidence is that our DSI has reduced. And I don't think anybody would argue that a delay in our own travel times is too much to pay to keep our kids safe as they cycle or walk or scooter to school. So this is important for our kids. I would absolutely be happy to help. I don't even know if there's any in my area. I'm sorry, I didn't look at the maps. But on that, I don't think I need to look at the maps in that much detail. It's got so much of a process to go through. But importantly, the local boards are doing it. And while we keep drilling down to local board work, we're never going to be able to get any of our own regional work done. So I have confidence in the local boards, confidence that the community will come back, but happy to help the consultation to go out to the schools and their families that are connected to the schools. If that would be of help, I'm happy to do that. But while you're here, I support the inclusion of Kariotahi, absolutely. It's a good thing to do, and I know that from being there myself, but also from listening to Councillor Baker. I really just want to thank all of Auckland Transport for your leadership in implementing this government's direction. Thank you for the work. I know that it's really tough being called Auckland Transport. No matter who you are, you're called Auckland Transport and you get the blame for everything. But I appreciate you, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I know it's a really, really tough time. But here to support in any way I can. Kia ora, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dalton. And next speaker, Councillor Hills, and Walker, Darby and Lee.
Kia ora, and thank you, Chair, and just want to thank you for allowing us to have so much question and debate on these important topics. So thanks to the staff, the officers on this. I know it's been a huge journey, and I do want to thank Councillor Morris Williamson for being part of a government who drove this whole program, the regulatory impact on safer journeys 2010 to 2020 was what transformed the transport system and required councils to change their speeds based on cycle, pedestrian and vehicle deaths and serious injuries. But I'm glad you were there for those collective decisions to help back us up through that now. So thank you, Councillor. And then I'm glad the new government took it on as well. And I'm glad Waka Kotahi and Auckland Transport kicked most of this off in 2016, actually, so before the change of government, because of the great work Morris had done. Just want to, point out the very serious thing, and Councillor Bartley did name some of the high-profile victims who've passed away on our roads. And my question to Chair Wayne Donnelly before around what happens if we push back was a great answer, that if there is evidence, we have to follow it. And I think that is the most important thing for us as governors. And I know we aren't, we get off kind of scot-free under the law around our director, we're not directors, but directors of Auckland Transport have a different risk profile to us. So I'm glad that this sort of process will be followed if it is seen there is evidence of harm to residents in our city. And we can see, 600 odd people a year is a huge number of people in our city that, 14 seconds is not a long time when 47 people never came home at all. So it's a long time to be away from your family. So I just want to say that, our communities are demanding this. We may hear some headlines that it's not in that way, but I've been to plenty of public meetings, plenty of schools. I've had plenty of parents and teachers email me demanding crossings, raised crossings, speed management changes, lots of things. And you know, before the election, some of the opposition was hurry up, why do other areas get it, how come that school got it? So there is a lot of push to have this done. So I think it's really important that we continue to support these processes. But as always, we need to be consulting with people so they understand the benefits, so they understand the changes, and so they can give that feedback on what Chair Watson was saying around sometimes it doesn't work, or jumping from 30 to 50 to 30 within a small zone. And I know in Councillor Sayers and Councillor Baker's wards that can be very confusing if you're going 60, 80, 40 within a short distance. So I think it's really important that we support this, and thank you, Chair, for allowing us to have this debate.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Walker, Darby and Lee.
So I'm entirely supportive of safety and measures around that. Having said that, I have a range of concerns. I would suggest that if we foresight this out, there are going to be some very high costs around implementing this. We're talking about zones that will require multiple signs. The signs themselves will have some confusion attached to them. Is it time of day or the like? It may well be that this triggers a round of calming measures and other things. And then, as a consequence, you'll see displacement. So motorists, if they're faced with having to go slow in a particular area, will then make decisions around taking alternative routes. Those alternative routes may generate safety concerns in themselves. In addition, as I pointed out, there are particular schools that are on arterials and other streets where we will end up slowing down movement, and that includes the movement of people that are car sharing, buses, public transport and the like. So that sets in place a whole range of other unintended consequences that might actually reduce public transport use, for example. So what concerns me is that these sorts of things really need to be well thought through, and we should be acquainted in advance, because we've only got so much money to spend. Travel plans aren't being funded to the extent that they need to, certainly in my ward, and they are one of the best ways of ensuring that people get to school safer and take roads and paths that are safer. So I just want to put that up. This may be being driven by government, but for sure I doubt that they're going to give us any extra funding around it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Darby.
Thanks. Look, probably slightly different point of view than the previous speaker. I'd like to see this work progressed even faster, but I don't want to undertake any shortcuts on public consultation. I certainly don't want to delay this a month for somebody to read an A4 paper about, you know, qualifying the proximity of Aucklanders to somebody they know who's injured. I used to drop my dry cleaning off like about 5 years ago and noticed a woman was no longer working there. About a year later I inquired and I was told, oh no, she got hit by a vehicle crossing a crossing and up in Devonport. And then a year later I asked, oh, is she back to work yet? No, she won't be back to work. She can't work anymore. That was one of my examples of proximity personally to somebody I knew, you know, just undertaking my daily or weekly dry cleaning drop off. I know too many cyclists, too many pedestrians, too many motorists in Auckland who are, unfortunately, they're not deceased, but they're seriously injured. They suffered serious injury. So by all means, councillors, read that A4, but please don't delay the decision making of this committee or Auckland Transport. We have to get on with this. I do not want to hear a list, as my colleague Councillor Josephine Bartley had to read out before. I don't want to hear those lists read out at this committee. We should be reading them out, and Councillor Bartley did the right thing actually, because it really struck a chord for me when I hear a name called out as opposed to a statistic being considered. So not on my watch, please, shall we delay this. About costs, Paragraph 11 talks about the proximity of Aucklanders to somebody they know, etc., but it also talks about the costs. You could go and build your way out of it, and you could spend upwards of, looks like, around about $40 billion building your way out of this, or you do it the way that's proposed. Or you could look at another cost, and that's the economic cost of this, and I think it's something like, Councillor Hills, I think you just told me it's something like 607 million.
That's just ACC cost alone of 1 year of injuries.
There we go. So which cost do you want to bear? You want to bear this really low cost that we're discussing here today with the body of work that we're embarking on? Or do you want to build your way out of it and spend $40 billion worth of public money? Or do you want to just keep, ACC and taxpayer money, the health system churning away, dealing with all those that are unfortunately seriously injured, plus injured, for the rest of their lives? You know, our call. Let's get on with it, I would say.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
I just want to, I'm not going to discuss the substantive issue, just the process, Mr Chairman, and thank you for including the request for that, that report that staff have quoted from. And once I read that, I will be able to have an opinion, but I'll be interested to see the influence of alcohol abuse and the influence particularly what I learned in recent weeks from a district court judge of an absolute epidemic of a new brand of methamphetamine, which is like an epidemic through parts of our community where people held in cells are punching the cell walls until their fists are a bleeding mess. But we'll wait till we see that full report. But what I would like you to do, Mr Chairman, if you could, given some people around the table are new to local government in Auckland, what we mean, and it's in every clause by the Regional Transport Committee. I see different clauses talk about this committee, they talk about Auckland Transport, and they also talk about the Regional Land Transport Committee. I can say that in the past, and in other parts of New Zealand, the Regional Land Transport Committee is made up of members of local government and regional government. They come together from time to time to make decisions, and also on the Land Transport Act plans, RLTP, Public Transport Management Plan, and so on. So in Auckland, it's a little bit different, and perhaps you could explain just who is the this Regional Transport Committee. Thank you. It's not this committee.
Councillor Turner?
I just want someone to explain.
Yep.
I'm sure Councillor Williamson would be interested to hear.
Yeah, we will do it, but not in the middle of the speeches. We've got people that's debating at the moment. So, Councillor Turner, but we will get that answered, Councillor Lee. Councillor Turner?
Thank you. I understand the problem and I understand what's trying to be achieved. All I want to see is that we don't penalise the vast majority of good people by making them all drive slow and in their cars when they are not a problem. I agree with this idea of some rat runs, that rang a bell, because I've seen that in West Auckland and plenty of places for other reasons as well, but road changes causes a change in the traffic. Just going back to the sort of people, my business is on the corner of Jays Road and Woodlands Park Road, Titirangi, and it's directly opposite the Woodlands Park Primary School. And just to one side of my business premises, there is a raised crossing outside the front door of the school. In the 40 years I've been there, 2 council trucks racing each other, they've rolled on the bend, there's a quite curve there. There's been several ridiculous things take place, which luckily caused no injury. Just last month, this side of Christmas, in the middle of the day, a school day, luckily all the kids are inside, someone turned up on the intersection and just burnt her out in wheelies round and round and round until my staff went outside and they saw us all and drove off. So all I'm trying to say is, please make sure we use common sense so the majority of decent Aucklanders aren't unduly penalised by an over-the-top response, and we don't actually get to the people we're trying to manage. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. And we've got just two people now, or three now. So Councillors Henderson, Ferry and Bartley to conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Just echoing Councillor Darby's call to get on with it. I think that it's a really, really good idea. It's a minor point, but I do think that we should make this very clear that in a lot of cases where we are called upon to look at safe speeds around schools, they'll come from a range of people. They won't come from just one resident. Quite often they come from the school themselves, as in the case of Freiburg. They come from local residents that are sick of the absolute chaos that comes with living next to a school, and I used to be one of those residents, and that was pretty tough. Often it will come from parents of kids at the school as well, and quite often multiple, not just one. I really like that we are looking to empower local boards through this process, because although requests do come to us as councillors, I would say that local boards get the majority of those requests, and they know it's their local streets. They deal with these people on a very, very close basis. I think it's entirely appropriate, and I think it's a really good development. Lastly, just in commending this, I do kind of point out that in a lot of kind of the collective corridor around the country, people hark back to the days of kids cycling to school and walking to school, and the halcyon days of birds chirping and white picket fences. Well, now it's unsafe for most Aucklanders to allow their children to walk or cycle to school a sufficient distance where road environments are not safe. We're trying to fix that, and we're trying to get Auckland back to a place where it actually was in the past, and probably a better place and a safer place. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Ferry.
Thanks. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I did just want to address one thing that's been raised in debate, and this is this idea that people who speed are somehow bad people, or that this is about penalising decent Aucklanders. The fact is that most accidents are accidents. They are based on mistakes. Nobody, well, very, very few people each year set out to deliberately hit somebody with their car or to be hit by a car or otherwise harmed in our road corridors. Certainly, I'd be very surprised if there are any stats that show children around schools being in situations where someone tried deliberately to hurt them. So we're talking about a situation here where we're minimising risk and we're minimising the impact of mistakes. One of my kids, and I've mentioned this before, one of my kids was hit by a bicycle going quite fast on Simon Street. He walked away from that. If he'd been hit by a car going the same speed, he would not have. And so in both of those cases, the cyclist didn't want to hit my kid and a driver wouldn't have wanted to hit my kid. In neither case would they have been speeding, but they would have made a mistake because they would have gone through a red light. So we're actually talking about reducing the risk. And we know physics on this is really simple. You hit someone when you're going faster, the bigger your vehicle, the bigger the damage to the person that you hit. And so while this is primarily about lowering speeds for cars, it's also about creating a safer environment generally for everybody in that road corridor. The people in the cars are going to suffer less damage when they're hit by mistakes made by decent Aucklanders too. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley, could you finish it off, the debate,
thank you.
please?
Yeah, I think someone mentioned that in the report it talks about like 1 in every 2 will know someone that's been affected by a death or serious injury or being hit by a car on the roads. And I think we're already on track to achieve that, because in one of our workshops, Councillor Ferry spoke up about her son. Councillor Fletcher, you mentioned someone that was also affected, injured. I think
they died.
Died, yes. And then my niece was hit on Tripoli Road, and she's got ongoing brain damage from that. So we're on track for that comment to actually be true, or to come to fruition. I am going to support this because I don't want this to be the only thing that Auckland Transport does to slow down traffic, to slow down speed. I know that it's something that we're doing because of the government, But I point to something that Auckland Transport has done that was successful, which I didn't like at all, and that was the self-explaining roads project in Point England. Did not like that, but it worked. They put visual cues in the middle of the road, they put these trees in the street, and that slowed the traffic down. But locals didn't get it, and they would cut the trees down, and, it's good firewood. But it achieved, its purpose of slowing the traffic down, and we have a decrease now in that area of car accidents and people being injured. So there are other things that Auckland Transport does that help us achieve making streets safer. And I'm worried about losing the why in all of this, because there were some other projects we did, and like innovating streets, and the communication, the implementation put people off. But what it would have tried to achieve is what this is trying to achieve, to slow people down. I really hope it's not a cheaper version of trying to get speeds reduced in our streets, of having signage, because not a lot of people follow what's on a sign, but it's something, and I suppose it's what we have to do. My niece and my nephew currently, they scooter and they bike to school in Sunny Hills. I was able to walk to school. I never got run over by a car or anything like that, and I just really hope that this will ensure or help go somewhere for our little next generators to be able to do the same that we did, and not get injured on their way to school. So yeah, that's the main crux of what I want to say about this. The thing that people bring up for me in my communities, I had a meeting in one of the worst streets in my area, and a lot of people thought it was to try and address, the ram raids, because the families, their kids were involved in ram raids. What eventuated was they asked me for speed bumps in their street, because their kids play on the street and so many cars keep speeding down there. So it's quite interesting that speed is a major factor for a lot of people. I'm on a board of trustees for a school in Mangere. Number one issue there, aside from, the poverty and the education, is speed. Cars speeding on the roads next to the school and speeding on the roads in front of the school. So that's quite an issue that I find with a lot of schools in my area, is they ask me, we need to slow the traffic down around here. So I'm just going by what my communities are telling me they want to see happen, and I hope this will make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. It's been moved and seconded.
I have a question that needs to be answered.
Yeah. Told you, Councillor Lee, it is going to be answered after this matter is voted on, okay? That's the way we go. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those
Aye.
against? Carried.
Is that unanimously carried? Can we record it unanimous then?
Was unanimously, yeah.
We can record
now,
it, thanks.
Barry, could you answer Councillor Lee's question?
Sure, I understand Councillor Lee's question was in regard to the Auckland Regional Land Transport Plan and responsibility for that. And under the establishment of Auckland Transport, the legislative establishment of Auckland Transport, that sits with the Auckland Transport Board, that responsibility. And the board is, the Auckland Transport Board is the committee.
Yeah.
Point of information, the information online about that says, which I managed to Google in about 2 minutes, is that the Regional Transport Committee is composed of the Board of Auckland Transport's directors and a representative from Kiwi Rail. It's quite easy to find.
Okay, so just as the people are coming up for the next item, we're going to try and just take a couple of minutes to fix that flashing light, which might involve turning all the lights off. So just as the next presenters are coming up, we'll just have a break for about 2 minutes, folks. Thank you.
I thought it was a strobe light. It was a